or any of that sort of stuff. But also, it's like being in a position where, like the upper middle classes will teach us shit that's detrimental to us. Yeah. So like, I remember taking a class when I used to go to school, as long as I was there. And there was a class called sociology.
Mm-hmm.
And in sociology, I remember explicitly being taught that nepotism is wrong. Yeah, explicitly, nepotism is wrong. If you just give a job to your brother, sister, mother-in-law, husband, wife, whatever, with no transparency, that's wrong. Nepotism is wrong. I'm here for it, bro.
Hello and welcome to Grind, Hustle, Repeat, conversations around creativity and culture. I'm your host, Nee Odate Evans, and this is the show where we talk to creative entrepreneurs and discuss the ups and downs of their creative journeys, and hopefully by sharing, it provides guidance for others. Now, my guest in this episode was one of the first rappers in the UK to ever get a record deal back in the early 2000s, groundbreaking. He now uses that industry experience to coach and mentor some of Manchester's best artists and young creatives. Now, if there was ever somebody who was at the intersection of creativity and culture, he is it. And through his organization, £30 Gentleman, a creative company with a social mission, he delivers employability skills and awards to adults and young people. My guest today on Grind, Hustle, Repeat is Danny Fahey. Bro, what's good?
Yes, me.
How are you,
Yeah.
man?
This is great, man. Like, I feel like Grind, Hustle, Repeat says it all. It's in a nutshell, right? It's in a nutshell for a lot of people, and a lot of people that hustle and move in culture and art spaces, and navigating like this Black British experience is what it feels like, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Grind, hustle, repeat. It makes sense. I'm glad to be here, bro.
It's funny because it's like the name came, and we were speaking before about ideas and quote unquote unfinished projects. It's like the name I had the idea like maybe over a year ago and just kind of did a bit, sat on it and whatnot have you. But I think now, the year that we've had, everything just felt right to kind of put the wheels in motion and execute everything. So 2020 lockdown, how's that been for you? I know for a lot of people it's been like a super reflective year. Like, what have been your takeaways, if anything, from everything that's happened?
You know what? Like, it's this year, as for lots of people, has been like humbling. I think a lot of people have realized the things that they thought were important, some of them don't mean anything. And there are some people that will thrive in these kind of conditions,
Mm-hmm.
Where things are difficult to get off the ground, where there's control in spaces where there probably shouldn't be any. For some of us, that's been our lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
Especially anybody who's old enough to have like lived through the 80s,
Yeah.
70s or 80s as a person of color in England. Right?
Would you class yourself as one of those people where you kind of thrive in this situation?
I feel like I have thrived in this situation, and some of that is sort of like, business wise and personally, I suppose, but business wise, thriving in this situation, there's a lot of proof of concept that's kind of had the opportunity to come to the surface with the way that I do work. Like, I run my business like really, really lean.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have like a large creative studio. I don't have assets that I can't afford.
Mm-hmm.
There's no lending. Like, everything that I've got I own. There's no finance wrapped up in this business. There's no borrowing. There's no partners somewhere else secretly that have funded any of the work. And for the majority of it, there's a lot of parts of the business that I can do myself,
Mm-hmm.
creatively and otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So it means that running a business very, very lean, with like really low overheads, small office, no neon light on the wall, no big agency kind of style of work, and no staff that I can't afford, or people with jobs that I don't need, just to look like a larger business. All of this kind of stuff has helped me stay at sea through this period of time. Where I've looked at some of my contemporaries and people that work in my space, and lots of them have like vehicles that they're leasing, dumb shit like photocopiers that they're leasing, all of this kind of stuff, and a lot of them sank quick, like really, really quick. You know, so when people talk about like being agile in business and being able to, like, you know, everybody talking about the pivot this year, right? Everybody talking about pivot, like pivoting
That's
will
the
be
buzzword, man.
one of the buzzwords, isn't it? It's up there.
Yeah.
But you know, when people talk about pivoting or being agile, you can't do that if your business is overweight, saturated with dumb shit that you don't need. So if you're light enough to move, you know, if somebody passes you the ball, goes, yo, it's 2020, there's some hot shit, you got to get rid of that ball quick time. If you're not able to really quickly and be agile, move, make the pivot and do it. And sometimes that's about making hard decisions. Like, I haven't had an assistant since the end of March. So we was ahead of time with the pandemic, because we were talking to somebody about work in Italy, and then we've got close friends that we work with in Prague. So we was about 2 weeks ahead of the timeline where I knew this was happening.
Right.
So I sent my assistant home, paid him till October, sent the event manager home, and closed the office on the 8th of March. So everything was done like early and ahead of time. But it's that being able to, there's nobody else to come to an agreement with. I'm the captain, it's my ship, and everybody's flying home. Like, and it's being light enough and agile enough to make a quick turn and make them decisions quickly.
So question, so in the beginning when you started it, how deliberate was that? Was it a case of, I'm going to go into this and I want to be as independent as possible? Or was it a thing of, I'm going into this and actually going into it, realizing I can't get this, I can't get that, F it, I'll do it myself?
A mix of the both, you know, a mix of the both. It was definitely a mix of, in the very beginning of starting this business, it was almost like a bit of a reflex against like the kind of third sector modeling of working with people in culture. Do you know what I mean? So after my performing career, I spent quite a long time working in the third sector, in the art charitable sector, where everything is fund independent, grant dependent, and I just didn't fuck with it really. Me, like, you know, for the most part, a lot of it was dishonest. For the most part, it was large organizations drawing down large grants just to keep big buildings that none of us can get into open.
Yeah.
So I just didn't respect that at all. So the way that I decided to run this business was, what I can't do is draw down large amounts of money and funding to keep open a large building or an office or something else, because that's where the money is just absorbed and there's nothing that comes back. So I would always rather go, you know what, any of that spare money has to go into people's pockets.
Yeah.
But as a result of that thinking and that going ahead, then I kind of had a little bit of foresight and went, you know what, like, this government hates us anyway. So if they decide they're going to cut even more funding in our community for our people and in the creative industries in general, what's anybody going to do if you're dependent on that? You know, and there's a lot of artists and creatives that will, you know, kind of be on one side of the door chanting Babylon down hard, but then they'll be knocking on the back door, like cap in hand, like, yo, Arts Council, give us some P. And this Arts Council it's the same government that's like got the police in the streets killing our people. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not interested in none of it. Like, I'll get my money from the private sector. So working in art and culture, supporting people for creative industry, but getting private sector money through brands and, you know, other businesses, franchises, that's been my model.
Gotcha.
But that model with a small, agile ship to steer has been key to the development and lightness of being able to zip around and watch that grow into a little bit of a larger vessel. And I suppose the answer, like a bit more of it, is a lot of the time I got sick of waiting on people to do things. I got sick on waiting on a web developer. Do you know what? I'll learn to do a little bit of that myself, or I'll use one of these third-party, you know, spaces to develop my own website. Or got sick of waiting on a web designer. Do you know what? I'll do the design myself. You know, so as a result of those things early on, like, I can kind of do all of those things now. Like, I can edit video, I can graphic design, I can web design, I can do all of those, take photos, edit video, all of it. probably as you can. Do you know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? And probably for the same reasons,
yeah,
right?
yeah. It's funny because it's almost like the embodiment of the sign behind you: DIY or die.
Yeah. That is it. That is
Yeah,
it. That is like,
absolutely.
that's like an internal like strapline, like an
Mm.
internal mantra for like TPG as a business in the early stages. You know, there's always an internal kind of message. There's the public message, but there's an internal message, an internal mantra that runs, and that's the one that's like run for the longest. I think maybe like last year, maybe the year before, we were doing some work with some large partners who just wanted to try and like treat us like a little man kind of organization,
Yeah.
and it changed from DIY or die till we do what we want. You know, it changed from from that to that. You know, and I kind of stopped saying thank you and started saying fuck you instead. You know, and that it's you know, but that's the energy that's gonna get us through. I think, you know.
But you touched upon the government earlier on, just quickly, and it kind of
This is gonna get mad, isn't
it? It jogged a memory in my mind. One of the things throughout this whole period where I was just like, yo, that's a big disrespect, was when Rishi Sunak came out with that whole kind of rethink, reskill, reboot. Yeah. And I saw it, and you know what? I was just straight up offended. Like, because I've always had this thing of, one of the things that's upset me about, if you choose the life of a creative, it's almost like you are saying, unless you're blowing and you're a celebrity or whatever, it's like you're saying that I'm not allowed to have the nice things in life in terms of the house, the car, the holidays and whatnot have you. I have to struggle to be an artist. And I've never subscribed to that. Like, I'm like, actually, you know what? I'm going to find a way to have all of these things, because I just think that's normal. I don't think it's asking for anything above your station. I feel like if this is my calling and what I want to do, I should be able to, you know, have that thing to provide for me. But when he said that, I got angry, first of all, and then I started to think on it. And so when you said the thing of like, you know, the government don't care about us, and I was like, that's the conclusion. Not no conclusion, it's something I've always known. But I was like, look, these guys, they don't care. And it's clear that they don't care. They talk whatever they talk, but they don't care. So are you the fool for expecting something from them? Okay. So now I'm like, as creatives, do we need to come from a different place where we need to separate our income from our art? So, for example, like I said, you might have an actor who is a waiter and generally doing like a low paid job, and that's how he gets his day-to-day money. But is there now like a responsibility on creatives to be more savvy, or to be more creative with their finances? So where people are looking at things like Bitcoin, Forex, gold, investing, and it's like, I feel like there needs to be something that, it's in the same way that when you become an actor, they're like, sign up to Spotlight, sign up to Equity. There needs to be something else where it's like, and we're going to help you manage your money as well.
Yeah, I think all of those things, and you know, my perspective has been this as well. There's a few different things to say here. I think one of them is that for a lot of the creatives that are publicly going ham on social media, oh my God, lots of these guys have been drinking the Kool-Aid anyway. Lots of them have only existed in like a funded public money space. So I think that's one thing. I think there's a generation of creatives that this is their first rodeo under a real, true Tory government, like a truly scornful one that hates poor people, one that hates black people, one that hates gays and trans people. Like, this is a true Tory government. This is some Thatcher era shit. And for some young creatives, this is their first time. This is their first rodeo underneath it, and they're only responding in that way. I think for the politicians to say something like retrain is almost the assumption that some of these creatives in the world didn't train to be the masters that they are, which is another madness. But it brought me to this conclusion, which is, it brings me back to the beginning. And the beginning is this: lots of the successful, thriving diverse scenes in England, whether that's UK rap or house music, grime, any sort of Afro beat, any of that sort of stuff. Industry and public money didn't make any of those things happen. People with passion who had no money in the beginning made those things happen. Black kids and gay kids made house music happen. Industry jumped on it. UK rap made its own platform. The industry jumped on it. None of these things, it's not that these things existed and then artists got to jump on them and benefit from them. It was completely the other way around. It's artists that made everything with nothing, everything from scratch with nothing but passion. When there was no money, no infrastructure, and we're in that space, we're continuing to do those things are going to be really, really fucking valuable. But when we get to the other side of this, we would have maintained our own communities. You know, it's like the kind of it's like the broken window analogy. The broken window analogy where, you know, if you're in a community and somebody smashes a window and nobody comes and repairs the window, it tells people passing through that nobody cares about that community. So somebody's going to smash another window on that house, and then eventually the house next door, and then eventually, do you know what I mean? It's a neighborhood that has no maintenance. Yeah. So these times now is the times where we need to go, okay, there's a window broken in our community. Let's do that in this creative community. Let's maintain our community, and we are going to have to maintain it with passion. If there's no food in the pot, we're going to have to maintain it with love. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's where I view all of this, is that we're just going to have to keep on doing what we've always done. You know, and it wasn't that long ago. Like I kind of did a bit of an Instagram to my community. You know, I did a live rant. But it wasn't that long ago that, you know, as somebody who loved rap music in England, you had to go out, or even any type of black music, you had to go out on a Sunday night, because that's the only time that clubs would allow us to be in, because the bar spend wasn't high enough, because we weren't in the same place economically, and because the demand wasn't there for the music and all of that kind of stuff. So we've been here before. We've been on the margins before. We've been on the outside before, but it's our dedication and passion to doing what we love that got us to this point of high industry. Imagine how crazy it is that we can switch on like the TV or whatever device you're listening to and hear and watch people that sound and look like yourself 24 hours a day. You don't have to strive or fight for none of that anymore. Where, you know, it wasn't that long ago, you know, pre One Extra type of era, where you might have had 8 or 9 hours for the whole week of programming, if you was lucky. So we've been in this space before, and we've been in a harder space than this, economically, financially, culturally. We can survive all of this and come out of the other end of it as long as we maintain our own community.
You know, it's funny because you it's like you activated another memory when you were saying the whole thing of like, we've been here before, and it took me back to my promotion days in the like 2002 when we started Meant to Excel, and the hoops that we had to jump through just to hold a party in a bar. Like, so in the beginning, even just trying to get a bar, and then you know that you're having these meetings with these managers, and you're having the conversation, and you know, like, they ain't let me in here. Like they ain't let me in here. And so I remember one time we had a meeting where we were like, we need to find a white guy, and he needs to front what we do. So he needs to be the one. It's, you know, one of the things I'm really happy about is that we never went through with that. And we just kept riding. We were like, whoever's for us is for us. You know, and so, but the fact that we had that meeting, and when I'm talking about 2003, 2004, where we're like, we need to actively find a white person to have these conversations for us. It's not that long ago.
But you know what's crazy, and the reason I said like that's crazy is because that as a mentality still hasn't changed. And it's, you know, it's really like, I had a meeting at a brand last year. It was a car manufacturer, and they wanted to do some stuff. This was last year summer, and the person in the room that I was talking to was the only person of color at decision maker level. And, you know, we kind of got through the first meeting, and there was a second meeting that was there to like really work the locks and activate the money. And it was so mad that she gave me a crazy disclaimer and was like, listen, like when we're in there, like you've got a code switch. She didn't say it in those words. She said to me, don't say wagwan. Right? So the only other person of color at a decision-making level was encouraging me to code switch.
Yeah.
And then at some point, that was kind of what came, was like, listen, like my boss is like a middle-aged white woman and she might want to see somebody that reflects her, like in the second meeting speaking.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're not a brand for us, like I'll see you later.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful position to be in, to not be like, I need this money. Like, because if it doesn't fit, it doesn't work.
They need us.
Yeah.
They need us. And
yeah.
this is like the mentality that I've held on to. And it's really interesting is that it's becoming, I'm not alone in this anymore. We're like in trying to work in the brand world for the past year or two, that might have been seen as a problematic, like, perspective and attitude to have. But it's the truth, like they need us. Like all of them are tourists in our culture anyway.
I love that. I love that. Tourists in our culture. I wanna we've jumped around, but it's cool. I wanna go back again a bit. So obviously you're not originally from Manchester. I'm interested in how you got to Manchester. I'm interested in how TPG started, and I'm also interested in the name. Where does the name come from?
Mad. Okay. Nobody asked me that question for a long time, actually. It's interesting. In the beginning, people used to ask me all the time. So I ended up in Manchester a long time ago now, you know, it's like about, I think, 18 years ago.
Wow. Is that long?
About 18 years ago. I've been coming here before. Before I moved here, I've been coming here for like, you know, touring and the rave scene, garage, baseline, all of that sort of stuff. But when I came here, I came because my life was so mad as an artist. You know, the artist life that I had as a musician came with other things. It came with people that weren't good for me. It came with a lifestyle that wasn't good for me. It came from, you know, I was involved in a security trade for a long time. So it meant that, you know, I mean, without a doubt, like, you know, I was in my mid-20s with PTSD and didn't even know it, all of this kind of stuff, right? So when I came to Manchester, one of my good friends and his sister moved here. And I said, yo, I need to get out. I'm coming for 2 weeks. And I never went home.
Wow.
And I never went back. Like I stayed here, lined it up, brought my daughter and her mum like here after the summer. And like, that's what we did. And I got a chance to start again in a place that was forgiving of my lifestyle choices at the time. And I spent a lot of years undoing some of that shit as well. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I'm definitely not the same person I am now as I was, you know, 15 years ago, or maybe slightly less. Do you know what I'm saying?
Do you think you would have jumped, not jump's not the right word. Do you think you would have left, like, if it wasn't for your friend? So obviously your friend moved up there and you were like, I'm coming to stay. Was the idea, like the seed to get out there? So if not Manchester, it might have been somewhere else, or?
Bro, that seed was planted in my youth.
Okay.
To get out. Yeah. And not get out in the get out sense, right? You know what I mean? Not get out in the get out sense. But no, do you know what? Like, I feel like something that, as a child of hip hop, right? You, and I mean hip hop as a culture, not rap as a sound.
Yeah.
So as a child of hip hop, you grow up with a certain amount of aspiration, and some of that is about wanting to have better places to be. You know, and some of that's like, you know, kind of Black Panther hangover stuff that was in hip hop through 5%ers, wanting better education, better housing, you know, the right to clean water, all of these kind of things. So when you grow up in a certain space and you recognize that everything about where you are is wrong, you go, I need to get out of here, fucking ASAP. Do you know what I'm saying? Well, I feel like there's a different narrative for some youth now, especially in the South, where they're in love with the poor conditions that they're living in. But for me as a child, I recognized the poor conditions that I was living in almost immediately through the lens of hip hop and rap as a medium, and went, I'm getting out of this. So some of my friends, they used going to university as the opportunity to get out of London ASAP, soon as they could do it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, some of them went and they didn't even know what they wanted to study. You know, they did all of the bullshit things, history, English. They did whatever they could to get a loan and get out of London and get some breathing space. You know, so I feel like that as long as I was able to, I was always going to.
Yeah. So I guess
But
once the opportunity presented itself, you knew what it was in order to be able to take
it wasn't about the opportunity presenting itself. It was a critical time.
Gotcha.
It was critical. If I didn't make the decision then, it was a critical decision. It had to be made. It had to be done.
Okay. So you're in Manchester.
Mm.
Where does the idea for TPG come from?
It comes many years after. So like when I arrived in Manchester, the mission was to really go straight. The mission was to go straight. It was like, I'm never gonna touch like anything illegal again.
Mm-hmm.
This is it. I'm never gonna touch anything illegal. I'm gonna get out of the security trade completely. Because even when I was involved in music at the highest level that I was involved in it was a different marketplace. So I was still involved in the security trade.
Yeah.
I was still running nightclubs and doing all of those kind of things. So yeah, the aim was to never touch anything illegal, to get out of any negative cycles, to kind of purge any negative aspects completely. And I did that in an extreme way. Like I stopped drinking alcohol, I stopped going out to nightclubs, all of those kind of things. I vanished for a long time early on, but then slowly, you know what I mean, you start to rebuild and repair, right? One of my closest brethren from Manny, he came out of prison, and he came out of prison with a qualification. So he did a little bit. He came out of prison with a qualification, which was like a youth coaching qualification. And he went to work with young people in care that were getting ready to leave the care system. And that was the first time I realized that some of my creative experience and some of the social aspiration that I had could come together. So there were lots of things and lots of experiences that I had as an artist, but the one that was definitely life-changing that I had as an artist was I was on a tour, the very tail end of like my recording career. And when I had my deal at Virgin, I went on a tour that was a Stop the Violence tour. And it took in the whole of England. It was a response to a child that got caught in a drive-by shooting in Nottingham. And by the time we got to Nottingham...
Was that a young girl?
Yeah, it was a very young girl. I think her name was Tony Ann Byfield.
I remember.
That whole situation changed my life because when I got to Nottingham and I realized that the community was healing because we were there, and that for the first time there was somebody that arrived in their community that they felt like just by them being there, it was enough to start the repair process. And it wasn't. So when I'm talking about the people that were on this tour, there were around about 50 artists that were on the tour, from, you know, Miss Dynamite and So Solid Crew, lots of pop acts that ain't even around no more, all of that kind of stuff. But I was, myself and Tubby T were on that tour together. And that was when I realized, you know what, all of these experiences that I've had that are negative but also formative, and this social space, there's value for it all in learning. So that was the start. By the time I got here, and do you know what I mean, my brethren kind of presented the opportunity for me to go, I can take all of that and go into some of this youth work. I took a job working with young people, but it was years after, do you know what I mean, years after moving here that happened. But that was it. From then, I kind of didn't look back. I managed to get some qualifications through that job. I had no qualifications before that. I managed to get some qualifications through that job, and then worked in the third sector, art and creative sector, for like a really long time. I was headhunted out of the job that I was into another third sector organization that were just rotten to its core, and I didn't fit in, and it was all of the worst things that you could imagine about third sector leadership. And I didn't last. It was like, yeah, We'll say less, but I didn't last. Then I went to work in the Middle East for a short period of time, doing community and cultural development with an organization that's kind of like a research organization based here in Manny. And there were some great experiences. Like all of my international experiences of doing that kind of work came through working with them. That was a great experience. But we was working across like the kind of whole region, Beirut in Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, kind of across North Africa. But then when the bombing campaign started in Syria, is when it was like, nah, there's no time to be back there, because Beirut city is like really close to the Syrian border. So it's like, nah, we're back. And actually coming back made me go, okay, I need to be in the position to run my own shit now. Do you know what I mean? And £30 Gentleman as an idea had been floating around. And right, so maybe I'll jump into why it's called £30 Gentleman, and that will kind of allude to the rest. So, see, I was telling you about the when I was headhunted into the job and I didn't last.
Yeah.
In between that job and going off and doing some work abroad, I decided to do some like real reflection on what do I do next. Because throughout my whole kind of career, I've been a shape that doesn't fit in any other like organizations, right? I've been a shape that doesn't fit. Some of that's about my formative years. Some of that's about the honesty and integrity that I bring into my work. A lot of that is about me refusing to code switch. Like, this is what it is. So we're doing all of that reflection, and part of that reflection, in some writing, came to me that, do you know what, I remembered that I used to like read and observe GQ magazine like from a young age into my adulthood. It's been one of the mainstays in my life, and I kind of thought, what is that about? And I really unpacked it, looked at it deeply, and it was always, I suppose, comes back to the beginning of what we were talking about, of wanting to be somewhere else, and wanting to get out and wanting to understand what life was like in other places outside of where you are. And I thought, okay, and GQ is Gentleman's Quarterly. So what's the Gentleman, and what does that mean to me? And, I kind of started exploring that a bit. And in exploring that, I came across the £30 Gentleman. So in the Jacobean era, King James I, so this is like some medieval shit, right? King James I had a situation where as long as you had £30, you could come to the King's Court and the door would open, and you could buy a coat of arms and a title, and you would become a landed gentry. So they give you a strip of land. So £30 would get you a coat of arms, a title, so you'd be like a baron or some shit, or an earl or whatever, and a strip of land. But anyone could do that, and anybody did. Blacksmiths, farmers, tree cutters, whatever. As long as you had your £30, the door would open. But what this is about, it's not necessarily about the transaction, it's about everything that comes before. So if you are just a blacksmith and you want to get your £30, well, in those medieval times, you would have had to really get medieval, right, to get £30. That's like the equivalent of millions and millions of pounds to get a door to open. So that meant there would have had to be like a lot of not just social climbing, but social achieving. These are people that would have had to learn to read and write and do maths. They would have had to earn the respect of people in their community. They would have had to grow socially for all of the right reasons to even get to that point, to even get to the point of getting the money, to get to the point of the door opening. It's that part that I'm interested in. All of that self-investment that it takes. Whether or not the door opens once you've got the money is irrelevant to me. It's the beginning bit. It's the how do you invest that much in yourself so that you can decide to walk away from that door if it opens or not. So that's where like £30 Gentleman as a concept, the idea came from, and it's something that just grounds me as a person.
So where does that translate back into the modern time £30 gentleman? So like, as I said in the beginning, you work with a lot of artists and creators in the Manchester scene. What specifically are you trying to do for them or help them to you know, be in that position, so to speak, to be ready to go through the door or not?
You know, in the beginning, the very first £30 gentleman project was a friend of mine was working in a prison. She was working in a men's prison, and she was working with men, young men as well. Like it wasn't a young offenders, but she had like a really young cohort, yeah. And they were going to spend their first Christmas in the pen, and nobody was going to send them any Christmas cards. Nobody was going to tell them anything positive about themselves. Nobody was going to send them any messages. So the first project was writing cards to these guys. The second project was working with creative people that I really, really respected to get them to write a letter to their younger self. You was one of those people. You was one of those people to ask them to write a letter to their younger selves that would be shared in and amongst this wider cohort of people, for them to just pick the jewels from, to pick the gems from, you know, rather than somebody telling them what's right or wrong. You just go, here's a load of shit that's right and wrong. You can pick the jewels out of all of it. But that as a style has maintained. That as a style, it's very much like a leadership from behind situation, and there is no right and wrong, especially in this world. There is no right and wrong. You know what I mean? You know, every right person you know is doing wrong shit. So there is no right and wrong, but there's jewels, and there's ways to use them and ways to survive, right? So that's I suppose a bit of the method. And in terms of the talent that we work with and support, it's not just in Manchester actually, like it's kind of wider than that. So there's like emerging talent that I'll support from a sort of youth level or grassroots level development. But then there's like, you know, established professional talent that we work with day to day. So people like Gaika, for example, who's like a London-based vocalist, work with him every day, produce some of his work, manage some of his work. Dref, who is a visual artist, manage Dref full-time. Daisy Adams, who is a DJ, tastemaker DJ. So it's actually at a professional level, support and management, as well as development level. I think the other side of it is that, you know, like I was saying earlier, there isn't a big, bright, shiny office here and loads of shit that we can't afford. But what it does mean is that anytime we do have a project, we can pay some young creatives and young people, if they want to have the opportunity to develop and take part in a project, they can be paid to do that, instead of somebody paying me to bring them here for pizza. Which is, I guarantee you, any of these big organizations, they're trying to tempt the young people into the room with pizza. I kid you not. Do you know what I'm saying? So, you know, any of them that have an experience here, they never get paid less than £10 an hour, or they get paid like a full project rate if they're a creative. They get paid at a professional rate. And it's just done with the most integrity and the most authenticity that I can find. And it's just not the Mickey Mouse version. You know, I'm here to go, this is a vessel that is at sea. If you want to be on it, you can get a fair wage. Do you know what I mean? You can have real experiences, you can do real things. But this is the tone. This is the tone, and this is the language that's used throughout that.
What's the project you're most proud of so far that you've done? Or I know it's like, who's your best child, but
bro, that's a lot, me. Oh man, I don't know, bro. I know one of the things that happened over the past few years that I'm the most proud of is we were nominated for the for a business award with the Chamber of Commerce, the Skills for Business Award, and in the nominations it was like TPG, so it was £30 gentleman, the University of Manchester, you know, some other like large institutions, the Manchester College. And I was kind of looking at it like, rah, is this where we're at? You know, just to be in the nominations with all of these people, is this where we're at, kind of thing. This is like, I impressed myself with that. But then we won that award. So it was the Skills for Business Award. It was the Education Business Partnership of the Year award. So winning that award made me feel like, yeah, fuck you all. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, because they're large, publicly funded bodies. And to know that the work that comes out of this little room makes the same impact, you know, makes the same impact as these large publicly funded bodies makes me feel fucking great, mate. You know, so that's one of the things that happened that I was the most proud of. Project wise, there's so many like projects that we've done, like way before like pandemic and before Brexit. We did like an international brand project that was kind of like, you know, kind of a self-made project. It was based on relationships, people that I know from around the world. So that took in like Prague, Amsterdam, Tokyo, London, Manchester. So we took those grime artists and brought them together. And this is people in their own territories, the MC in their own language, but walk and talk like us, bro. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's really important that the artists from England that are emerging get to understand that your culture and who you are is worshipped. Like, you man are gods. Go and meet your counterpart.
Powerful, you know.
Bro, go and meet your counterpart in Prague, who's like a white guy from Prague 10, who walks, talks, dresses like you, gets all of his tracksuits from JD Sports, everything. Like, you man are gods, really. Like, you need to go and see that and understand that and meet these people.
That, you know? Yeah, that's what do you like? What does culture kind of like mean to you? And I know that's like a quite a vague type of question, but when you talk, it's evident like your passion for what you do. Like, you alluded to some of these other organizations where you know that they're just there, and so I'm trying to understand like the driver for you, if that makes sense.
Existing and being here in these spaces and not needing nothing from any of these people is the ultimate resistance, bro. The ultimate resistance. And that is definitely like a driver for man. You know, but also, like, do not get it twisted. Like, I'm not like the Dalai Lama or Gandhi or whatever, bro. Like, I'm here to get this money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like, look, this is a business. It's a business that has a social mission, but it's a business first. The social mission is just part and parcel of who I am. It's just part and parcel of who I am. It's me in my true form. Do you know what I'm saying? Without the ego, without any of the tough guy stuff, without all of the bullshit. The social mission has to come hand in hand.
Gotcha.
With this, but it is a business first. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I'm always business first, but people first too. Like,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It has to be that way.
Who do you define as a visionary? Like, who do you look to and be like, yeah, I like the way they're moving? Like,
it's interesting, you know, because I'm at a point where I think everybody should have a mentor, right? And I'm at a point where I mentor a lot of people. I mentor a lot of professionals at high level. I'll send you the link. You can subscribe. But
you know what? I'm gonna jump in for a second. We've known each other for like
ever.
Yeah. I said to Nana the other day, I was like, I don't actually think we've ever met, you know.
No, we have.
When was it? Was it really in the early days?
We have. You're old, but you're not that old, bro. You can see now.
Listen, the memory is a different thing. But I was sitting here thinking, like, because we interact, but I was like, actually, you know what? This is probably somebody that I need to, you know, like, you don't see something because it's right in front of you. And I'm like, this is somebody that I need to be talking to on a regular basis, more so than I do for that mentorship. Because, so like, full disclosure, before we started recording this and we was talking about the projects and whatnot have you, I remember like in the beginning when you were starting TPG and then I was starting Love Fatherhood. Right.
Yeah,
and so it
was on you. I was on you.
You were, and I was having this conversation with Nana yesterday, And I came to a realization yesterday. I got off I'm part of a business network, right? And for the video production business. And as a part of it, I have like an accountability person that checks in on me to make sure I'm doing stuff. This lady called me yesterday, and halfway through the call, I just wanted to get off the call. Yeah, like she was annoying me, yeah? But she hadn't done anything wrong. The only reason why she was annoying me, because she was asking me questions, and the answer to those questions was, yeah, I haven't actually been able to do that yet. And so it was like, it was the shame in me being like, oh, fucking hell, man, like, I'm slipping up again. But it's so important to be able to acknowledge, like, in that moment, I'm not angry at her, but like genuinely was like, I want to put the phone down on this woman. like why is she bothering my day? Like genuinely, like I was like, I wish I can cut this call. But as she's talking, and then she's just saying things, because I think she can even hear the vibe in my voice, and she knows it. And she's like, and she just said to me, listen, I just really want you to win. And it was at that moment where I was like, yeah, it's you know, bro. Like, it's you. So with the things that you said at the beginning of the call and whatnot have you, I was just like, yeah, I feel that. But I'm rambling now anyway, but yeah.
Cool, man. You got the editing skills, bro. So
sorry, yeah.
So yeah, I'm at a place where I mentor a lot of people. Do you know what I mean? At a professional level, high level management professionals, and I don't have a mentor, and I don't have one fixed mentor. But what I do have is I have plenty of examples of people that I look at in different ways for different things. Do you know what I mean? There's somebody who I will look at for creation. There's somebody I will look at for how they do business and manage business. There's somebody I will look at for how they manage their relationships and their temperament. And lots of these people are my friends.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I will tell you that Gaika is like the visionary. Like, we talk about the future. We talk about completely futuristic things, but these are my friends. You know, I talk to Dref, having Dref as, you know, somebody that I do business with, but also as a friend of mine. He's made me a better person. My temperament is better because I've learned from watching him navigate his life, just being a great and good person. Aggression doesn't feature as a positive. You know, all of those kind of things. So there's lots of examples of people that I might look to for different types of mentorship, but that's not embodied in one person. I would say in business, the person that I really, really respect is a guy called Amo Tawa. He's from Birmingham. He has an organization called Punch. Punch is a funded organization, but it's a straight shooter.
Okay.
And I respect Amo so much in what he's achieved, because Punch was just a record shop in the hood in Birmingham. And now it's like Birmingham's like kind of flagship Black and Asian, socially productive and supportive space.
Okay.
And it's culture first and it's people first. So I really, really respect Amo. And when this business wasn't sure what it was, when I wasn't sure if it was going to be in the funded space or it was going to be in the private sector or anything else, looking at Punch and Amo was the closest thing that I had to a role model in this. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I would say that. I would say it's a mix. It's a mix of my friends and abstract spaces as well. You know, sometimes in leadership, you're looking ahead a lot and you feel lonely and you're like, raw, where is everybody else? But it's because you're out in front. But sometimes if you look left or right, there's somebody right there. You know what I mean? And that might come from an abstract space, you know? And it might be somebody completely different to you, with a completely different worldview, life experience to you. But they'll be there as an example. But sometimes it's reading. Do you know what I mean? If you read the right things at the right time for the right reasons. You know, like I didn't read The Tipping Point until maybe like the year before last, but it was the time for me to read it. Gotcha. If I read it 5 years ago, it would have been too soon. Would have been too soon. I wouldn't have been able to apply any of that learning. You know,
I think that's something like I'm definitely learning in terms of understanding that things happen when they happen, and sometimes, you know, you're not ready to receive something, or you're not ready to learn something at a particular time, because oftentimes I can be like, oh, why am I only doing this now? But really, everything happens when it happens.
When it's
Switching it a little bit.
when it's right, it happens when it's right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, I think I know that a lot of people will lean on things when it's convenient. So some people will lean on like, how, you know, what happened when the timing's right. You know, this didn't happen now. Everything happens for a reason. Sometimes you're the reason. Sometimes you're the reason it didn't happen now. And unless you address that, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I'm with that, but I'm also much more with like accountability and reflecting and, do you know what I mean, rebuilding and repurposing and going, why didn't that work? Okay, let's do it again.
Cool. Switching it, like you mentioned when you moved to Manchester and you brought up your daughter and her mum. How over the years have you been able to balance fatherhood with everything else that you've been doing?
It's not a balance. It's not a balance. Like it's, I'm definitely at the point where I feel like when you're doing something that's this big and absorbs this much of your time, the only way for you to create the illusion of balance is to involve your family in your work. That's definitely something that I feel. And it's definitely not been easy. I think the beginning of things when I was pulling like, you know, 15-hour days every day, like them days are gone now as well. Like I definitely, like I protect my time and I look after myself a lot better. But those times were definitely difficult. Do you know what I mean? When you're spending so much time, and I'm a person like, I never worked at home. I always had to work outside. So I always had like an office space or a studio space. So getting that balance, I think, is super hard, super hard. I don't think anybody gets it 100% right. You know, you need your family to forgive you, and you need to involve them in your work as much as possible. That's what's worked for me, you know. And it's interesting though, because I'm at the point where, you know, my daughter's grown up in creation. She's grown up in the music business. She was in and out of studios before she could walk, type of thing. But she has no interest in any of this shit, bro.
So she's gone a completely different way, yeah?
You know, but not a completely different way. I think what she's done is she's got all of the skills.
Okay.
She's got the skills and she's got the resilience. You know, and some of that resilience is in her decision making. So, you know, she went to uni. She decided, actually, this is not going to work for me. You know, I want to go into doing something entrepreneurial. I know it's my second year, but I'll see you later. You know what I mean? I'm going to be pragmatic about it. I don't want 3 years worth of debt. I'm going to cut now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And she went into creating a beauty business, but it was about delivering the therapy, delivering the beauty. Then the pandemic hit, and she was like, right, I need to make a U-turn. So she was like, right, where am I gonna get my supplier in China? And I got the packaging from Taiwan, and she was just in it, immersed in it, and has repurposed, rebranded like the whole business. And now it's about products and supplies rather than therapies and application. And it surprised me how quickly she did it. And it surprised me that she was resilient in doing it. And, you know, she's 20 years old. She surprised me. Shouldn't have.
Yeah.
But she did. And it's because I forgot, you just watched everything that me and your mum went through as young creatives.
Yeah.
And you understand what this is. Do you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
she's definitely got all of the learning, but she's got no interest in being like, you know, in front of a camera or, you know, or any of that sort of stuff. But also it's like being in the position where, you know, like the upper middle classes will teach us shit that's detrimental to us. Yeah. So like, I remember taking a class when I used to go to school, as long as I was there. And there was a class called sociology. And in sociology, I remember explicitly being taught that nepotism is wrong. Yeah, explicitly, nepotism is wrong. If you just give a job to your brother, sister, mother-in-law, husband, wife, whatever, with no transparency, that's wrong. Nepotism is wrong. I'm here for it, bro. because that's what got those people through the door.
Yeah.
That's what got those people through the door. And you go to any of these large corporations, and it's all nepotism. You go to the biggest corporation in the world. You go to the Trump presidency, and the whole family's doing their thing.
Yeah.
So I'm in a position now where, do you know what, like the beginning of this year, or the middle, not the beginning, but the middle, early pandemic, I kind of said to my daughter, like, listen, like, I've got money here, and I've got money for an assistant to come back online. I can either give you the job and you just relocate for a bit and work with your dad and see your way through the pandemic, or you can continue to do what you're doing. And she goes, I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing, because she's like that.
Yeah.
but having the money, having the flexibility, the agility, and the overall fucking captaincy to say, you know what, you're coming and there's a job for you, no one can tell me nothing, is definitely the space to be in. And it felt good. And it kind of just comes back to that work-life balance, making your family a part of your work, being prepared enough and financially able enough to just make those things happen. That would have been her reward for my 15-hour days in the beginning. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I asked that question from a purely selfish position, in terms of like both Nana and I being self-employed. And one of my biggest concerns always is like, how much time are we allocating to the children? And so you'll get times where we're like in the garden studio working, and they're good boys. They'll get on with it. They do boy shit, but generally like they're all right. But there's always like a guilt. And I think I'm learning, and especially just kind of off of what you just said, is that it's like I'm almost learning to live with that guilt, because the guilt is very short term. The guilt is, today I didn't spend X amount of time with them, but long term, I guess the payoff is when you can turn around and say, I can help you with this, and then they have the agency to say yes or no. But like you're able to do that for them, so it's always really helpful to have these conversations. I mean, again, and so it is really useful having these conversations, especially with a parent that's been through it. Like, you're kind of, I guess what we're going through, you've been there, and so it's helpful just to kind of reassurance to a certain degree. So I appreciate that. Final two questions before we wrap up. It's two questions that I ask everybody that comes on. Is, what's the best advice that you've ever been given?
You know what? It's probably quite abstract, but I'm gonna give it because it's the first thing that sprang to my mind. Yeah. So that probably means that's the answer to the question. Long time ago, when I started out as an artist, and I was going through, like, I needed a name. I needed a name to perform under, and I found the name that I was gonna perform under, and that stuck. And there was a DJ, 279. He was on Choice FM every Friday. He was the UK rap champion way before everybody else. And I used to talk to him. I used to call him from the phone in the art classroom in my high school. Call him in the middle of the day at the studio in Choice. Yo, two, you saying dun 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 dun. And I called him. I said to him, "Yeah, man, it's Danny." He's like, "Who?" I was like, "It's Danny." He's like, "Who?" I was like, "It's Fallacy." It's like, "Well, that's your name. Your name is your name. Like, you choose who you are." And that really stuck with me, that like, we choose who we are. Whether that means that, whether that's a change of name, whether that's an embracing of identity, a culture, whether that religion is the anchor in that, whether another culture is the anchor in that, you choose who you are. And that was a really valuable lesson for me. That's a really valuable lesson for me. That made me go, okay, I don't need to, this is something I don't need to navigate. I just need to be it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I chose that. I choose this identity. I choose what it represents. I choose what it means. And I take that with me everywhere I go.
I like that. What advice would you give to yourself at 16. So I guess this goes back. I guess we've gone full circle in a sense in terms of those letters to your younger self. But yeah, what advice would you give to yourself at 16?
Boy, you know what? I really don't know. I really don't know, which is mad, isn't it, considering the project? And I've never undertaken the exercise myself.
Yeah. Okay.
I've never undertaken the exercise myself. But it would definitely be something along the lines of like, no matter how hard everything gets, and no matter how mad everything gets, you are gonna be all right. I don't think there's anything that I could have told my younger self that would have made them make better decisions. I don't think there's anything that I right now could tell my younger self that would make them make better decisions, because even when I think about who I was in my 20s, it's a different person. I don't know that person. If I met that person right now, I said, get them away from me now. What were you even doing? Do you know what I'm saying? Truly, I go, yo, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Get him out of here, man. We don't want that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I don't think there's anything that I could tell my younger self, if any advice that I would impart on them that would change the outcome.
I guess that's true acceptance really of life and everything we go through. Like that there's a mad level of honesty there, because it's being able to look at yourself and be like, I was always going to do what I was going to do. Because I would like to look back at certain things and be like, yeah, if I told myself this, that, and the other, then I would have done X, Y, and Z. But actually, when I want to do something, if it's bullshit or not,
you think you're right, and you're going to go and you're going to act on it and you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I say that, I don't mean it in a way like some people, when we get into these kind of discussions, some people start to, talk about destiny and things being preordained. I subscribe to some of that. For the most part, I don't. But yeah, I think that person wouldn't have had, that person definitely didn't have the emotional intelligence and the resilience and the foresight to act on any of the information. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like me, it's like when we talk about people having being able to use software.
Yeah.
Like social skills, soft skills. Like that's like software, right? So unless you are, I can give you the information, but unless you've done all of the upgrade work on yourself, you can't use that information.
Yeah.
Unless you've done the update, you can't use the software, bro. Like it's useless to you. I'll give you the information, I'll give you the software, but unless you've done the work on yourself, unless you've done the upgrade, you've done the update, that's information that's going to go nowhere. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like not updating your Mac, but you try and use something else. You're still on fucking Snow Leopard or whatever. Like it's not gonna happen.
Yeah. I love that, bro. Thank you so much for your time. Like
thank you, bro.
I mean, I enjoy all of these conversations, but I've really enjoyed today. Like it's always, the conversations that we have are always insightful. They're always inspiring. And I'm always, and you check me, and I appreciate that, because I walk away from these convos. I was going back, I was looking for something. I was going back through some of our conversations, and I was posting some stuff about love fatherhood years back, and you were like, yeah, I see you. It's making me do X, Y, and Z sort of thing. Not like it's a competition, but it is. But you know what I'm saying? But it's, yeah, all of these things are helpful. So thank you.
Bro. No, thank you. This has been like, yeah, a good start to the day, man.
Brilliant. I'm glad it has.